Hi there, folks. It's David Ostriker here in sunny Karmiel. It's a little bit chilly, a little bit, and it's not raining today again, which is good for my knees. It'll start raining again soon, I'm sure. This week is Parsha BESHALACH. Some people call it the big Parsha because it has the biggest miracle, I think, in the Torah. That is to say, the splitting of the Sea of Reeds. Not just the splitting of it, but it returns to itself when the Egyptians find themselves caught in the mud. It's the promise that you will never see the Pharaoh again to the Jewish people, reassuring them. But it leads up to a very frightful moment for the Israelite people, the freshly freed slaves. They find themselves with Pharaoh's elite forces, the charioteers that were the terror of the ancient world, behind them, and in front of them the sea. What to do? Well, I have to tell you, the Jewish people at the Yam Suf really very much remind us of ourselves today. You can see the DNA right there in front of us. Their reaction to this impossible situation is to tell an ironic joke. It's one of the few jokes in the Torah. They turn to Moshe and say, "There were no graves in Egypt? That you had to bring us here to die in the wilderness?" Very strange. Moshe's reaction is, shush, watch what God will do for us now. God's reaction to Moshe's statement is, what are you doing? You're stopping and praying at this moment? No time for long prayers, right? Get moving, go forward into the sea. And he gives Moshe instructions how to split the sea, and we know that the leader of the tribe of Yehuda jumped into the sea, and when the sea got up to his nose, the sea split, etc. And it seems to be an argument between prayer and action. Right? But one of the most important things to note is the Jewish reaction to being stuck between the elite forces and the sea. They're not cowed like slaves, interestingly enough. They're upset with their leader. And their leader has confidence in God, but God gives him different instructions. Religion. This is a central point of understanding our relationship with God. Karl Marx wrote about religion. It's a very famous, the last line of it is very famous. He wrote, "Religion is the sigh of the oppressed creature, the heart of the heartless world, the soul of soulless conditions. It is the opiate of the people." That is to say, when you want to suppress a people, give them religion, and the religion itself will suppress them. I rarely quote Christianity, but I will today. Matthew 22:21 said, Jesus said, "Render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's." It does raise a question as who decides this division, but it seems to be answered in Romans 13:1. Let every person be in subjugation to the governing authorities. Religion can be used to suppress a people, but that is not the nature of Judaism. The first Jew, Abraham, reprimanded God right at the beginning when he was discussing the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, and Abraham was defending Sodom, an evil city, but still defending them, that the innocent would die with the guilty. He says to God, "That be far from thee to do after this manner, to slay the righteous and the wicked, and that the righteous should be as the wicked, and be far from thee? Shall not the judge of all the earth do correctly, do properly?" That's definitely talking truth to power. And this seems to be the quality of Judaism throughout history. You know, the role that Mordecai plays, the role that Esther plays in Purim, the role of Joseph, were very often not the primary power, but the secondary. And yet we don't hesitate. The dramatic scene of the prophet Nathan, when he comes to David, and he says to David, what should happen to a man who has a huge number of sheep, but steals sheep from his poor neighbor, who has but one sheep? David says, such a man should be punished severely. And Nathan looks at him, looks at the king who has ultimate power, and says, such a man is you, great king. Because after all, he was stealing a wife from somebody else. The nature of Judaism is not to be cowed by a government. It is to pray that the government should be righteous. But it is certainly not one to say, we are obedient citizens. When we look at history, we can observe in our time, recent history, 4 revolutions that really changed the world. The British Revolution, the American Revolution, the French Revolution, and finally the Russian Revolution. The last 2, the French and the Russian, were depending on a philosophical approach, one from Rousseau, one from Karl Marx. And those religions expected the state to change the entire way the society was founded. The first 2 actually looked for examples from the Torah itself. And we know the phrase of the Declaration of Independence, very famous, right? That man is given unalienable rights from above. That is to say, the king does not grant any rights. All rights are granted to man by God, and then man resolves to give some rights to the government in order to secure a better life. But the rights themselves devolve from a relationship between God and man, not between the king and man, not between the president and man, not between the government and man. This is the essence of how Judaism teaches us to act, not to be the opiate, but to be the voice of truth to power. And so it is when Moshe goes to Pharaoh and tells him, as a spokesman for a group of slaves, to the superpower of the universe at the time. And in the end, Pharaoh sends the Jews out. Now this is an interesting phrase, because throughout the story we're learning that God has emancipated the Jews through Moshe. But the very last statement is Pharaoh sends the Jews out. This is a way of telling us that Pharaoh came to the conclusion at the end that there is a God in heaven and I better do this. And so we see the story of the Exodus, the story of the plagues, the story of the Yam Suf, this entire story is a foundational story that is repeated over and over and over for many, 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 many times over thousands of years to the Jewish people. And one would ask, why? Why is it that the Jews are tossed out of this country, that there's pogroms in that country, that there's this, and they continue to survive and they continue to prosper. And now, in the rebuilt state of Israel, it's very dramatic. And the answer that Chazal give us is this is done so that the nations of the world recognize God in this world. That they will see through the history of the tiny state of Israel, that there is a God in this world.
Shalom.
Shalom, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
And so the lessons of Yiddishkeit is the lessons of a God of history. It begins really at this moment, most dramatically. David Ostriker here in Karmiel, wishing you a Shabbat Shalom.